Hello and welcome to this cloud computing roundtable that's been sponsored by Microsoft. I'm Sara Yirrell, editor of CRN, and I'll be hosting the roundtable today. First of all, I'd like to introduce our panel for today. On the end, we have Ffelan, Sales Director of Care Micro, Justin Garlick, Managing Director of Verisolve, Nigel Gibbons, Executive Chairman at Unitech, Clare Barclay, Director of Partner Strategy and Programmes at Microsoft UK, and next to me is Dan Scarfe, Chief Executive of .NET Solutions. Hi everyone.
Hi.
The subject of the discussion today is the impact that cloud computing has had on the channel and continues to have on the channel, and how vendors can adapt their partner programs to help their resellers sell cloud offerings. So if we get straight into it, everyone. First of all, I'll ask Dan, are customers actually asking for cloud solutions, and do they understand the cloud?
I think they absolutely are asking for cloud solutions. It's one of the biggest shifts in IT in a generation almost. Customers are acutely aware of this big change that's happening in the market at the moment. I don't think customers necessarily fully understand what the implications of the cloud are to their business and to their customers, but with all the buzz that's in the market at the moment, there's certainly a lot of appetite from customers to understand more about what it is. And we've got a lot of customers who are actually starting to work on cloud-based projects with us.
I would echo that. I think over the last 12 months it's kind of turned from hype into evaluation from customers, and right from large customers it's definitely on the mind of the CIOs in terms of a strategy they need to be thinking about. Some of them, as Dan says, are starting the pilot or the purchase process, and others are definitely evaluating that as part of their strategy. And then in the small business market we are seeing a fairly rapid uptake of customers that want to be perceived as large. They want technology solutions that will help them be competitive in the marketplace.
Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that again. I think in the small business arena in particular, the customers have been very keen to look at and frankly jump on board with the cloud. It's come at just the right time. Their budgets have been under a lot of pressure under the past couple of years with the recession that we've all been through. They've possibly not refreshed hardware in the past, and moving to a platform where hardware is less centric to the solution, there's a great cost-saving opportunity, and it's been very well received.
I would agree with you all. I would note an air of caution, though, that cloud computing isn't a panacea to everything. I think also, certainly with some of the people we speak to, just getting them to understand the difference between capital expenditure and the various methods that they can account for their business, I think is still a part of what the solution needs to be. I think there is definitely the interest, and I think it is becoming almost inevitable when people consider it at a peripheral level. But I think it's as much about what the customer needs as necessarily what it is the channel wants to give them, which is always been one of the channel's dilemmas.
I think one of the biggest challenges is still education, whilst a lot of market pundits and industry vendors feel that the job's done. It's not. I think it was TechAid, their recent research on the subject showed a very poor understanding of what cloud was, particularly through vendors and the way they're approaching cloud. Many of them have a lot of legacy investment, a lot of capital tied up in that.
Indeed.
And that's being wrapped up in this new cloud marketing language, which is very dangerous. I think one of the recent points that emphasised that was highlighted in the news when Oracle came out with their cloud in a box, which I found rather amusing, because I think anyone in the cloud industry would acknowledge that if you're buying tin, buying hardware, it's not cloud. It's probably fog. When you hear a foghorn, I think that's a warning. So, in terms of vendors' channel, vendors have to be very honest about that, both to their channel and to the market. And this education and awareness is really only just beginning, because now hype's there. People are starting to dive in feet first, and they're going to get wet.
I just agree there with Justin and Nigel as well. I don't think cloud is this panacea where your entire IT infrastructure needs to move into the cloud. A lot of vendors are saying it's a binary decision. You're either in or you're out. And I don't think that necessarily sits well with enterprise customers who, as Nigel said, already have large investments in on-premise solutions. And getting to the best solution will be finding a hybrid model where some of your solutions are in the cloud, some of them remain on-premise. There's still big legislative challenges around storage of data in the cloud, and it's going to take a while for this education to come to fruition, but also for legislators to catch up with this new movement in IT and figure out how they can solve some of these challenges, which will actually enable cloud adoption to become more virulent.
I mean, I think there's a couple of points actually picked up by both these. So Nigel's point around education, 100% agree. I think both educating the channel, not just do they know what it is, but actually what does that mean for their business commercially? What decisions do they need to make? How do they mix this with cloud versus on-premise? And then to echo what Dan said, I mean, I think this is definitely not going to be a one-size-fits-all, everyone's going to just move to the cloud. Customers are expressing it as a desire and interest because they're looking at ways post-recession to take cost out of their business. This is an alternative consumption method that they want to explore as part of their IT strategy. But let's be under no illusion, the on-premise business continues to be a very healthy business. I think what channel partners need to think about, though, is the cloud business, because this is top of mind with customers, is growing faster than the on-premise business, and that curve will continue. And if you look at any analyst reports, that's exceeding what the analyst reports were a couple of years ago. So I think for channel partners, they have to think, where do they want their business to be? How are they going to embrace it? And then how are they going to integrate that as part of their existing business as they capitalise on the growth opportunities ahead of them?
Next question kind of flows, actually, if I can direct them at you, Paul. What are the first steps resellers need to sort of take to transition their customers to the cloud?
I think the most critical step any reseller can take is not necessarily to immediately try and sell the cloud. It is, as we've touched on, it's educate. It doesn't fit everybody. It's not meant to fit everybody. There are some powerful offerings. There are some powerful arguments why certain tranches of the business may wish to remain on-premise. But certainly education is something we've focused on. We've made sure that all of our customers are aware there is something called a cloud. They're not still, all of them, completely clued up as to what they can and can't do. But for us, we saw a big opportunity, but we also saw a threat. And the threat was that somebody else went to our customers and threw the cloud at them, as it were, sold them something that wasn't necessarily right, rather than giving them time to consider it. So we've made sure that all our customers are considering the cloud and have a reasonable understanding of what's available. And I think that, more than necessarily trying to sell it or force somebody down a route, is paying dividends for us. When it's explained correctly, it sells itself in certain ways, in certain applications, and that's the critical thing. We've touched on the hybrid as a concept already. Hybrid model will probably suit the vast majority of businesses, small or large. And I think that is going to be the way forward for a lot of people, but in their time, not necessarily our time.
I think we're seeing a change which is demanding pause, both from vendors, the channel, and the consumers. But I'm afraid business is driving people blindly ahead, and we're all trying to scrabble and deliver and do the good stuff. And what I mean by a pause is the business models for our customers are only just evolving in terms of how they're going to adapt their businesses to leverage the cloud. We've heard all these great things about scalability, improved security. It often is more secure, that's another debate. In terms of the channel's business models, how the channel is moving from that box shifting mode to more of a digital delivery mode for the core underlying technology, more to a service support, maintain and evolve sort of mode. So these business models, until they've started to shake out, it's going to be very hard to deliver true value. And this is the challenge for vendors and the channel, in terms of vendors being very clear in terms of what their strategic objectives are for their technology, so that the channel is clear in terms of how they have to change their model. And then the flip side of that is the market, being clear in terms of how the market is wanting to consume this stuff. And we're seeing, certainly at the SMB level, vendors, software as a service, SaaS, those who are wanting a single solution, very simple, they'll often self-serve. Dan's recent business venture delivers that in terms of going online, being able to select a variety of vendors, compare against those and buy. and consume direct. That is where a vendor is going to be selling direct. And we're seeing that already, Microsoft with their BPOS. But then the next form of consumption is where there's a blended model. Many of the businesses want customization, but they're also wanting to consume software as a service. So the partners, the channel, sits now between the vendor and the customer. But we now have a new world of cloud which is building this new demand around aggregation and support of customers. And we're going to increasingly see a new type of partner evolving, which will provide aggregation services working within that partner sphere and sit with partners between the vendor and the customer. So in a very simple way, that sort of tries to summarize it in 3 slices. It's much more complex than that. But the business models fundamentally don't exist, and that is why it's so challenging to have these discussions with clients.
A lot of partners do see the cloud as a threat, but they do need to understand that there's also a great opportunity as well. Change is not necessarily always a bad thing. I mean, there's lots of people say if you don't want change, then don't work in IT, because it's a constantly evolving business, and the channel needs to be aware that they can't necessarily just sit back and do what they've been doing the last 5 or 10 years, because this is not a Microsoft-led thing, it's not a Google-led thing, it's an entire industry shift being driven by customers. So the channel has to understand, how it impacts on their business and potentially re-architect their entire business to take advantage of the opportunities that cloud offers. But they can't necessarily just sit there and hope that the storm just blows by, because it won't, unfortunately.
And that's definitely what we're seeing. I mean, I think the point that Nigel makes about one size fits all and the business models emerging, I mean, I totally agree with that. There's not, often partners will come to Microsoft and say, so what do I do then? And I think even we are seeing different business models emerge. I mean, I think there's some themes that we follow that kind of says it tends to be the ones that kind of pioneer with it, tends to be the leadership from the company. So whether that's chief exec or someone within there that says, I'm going to bravely take this decision, or they look at, do they segment their business in a different way so they can continue to keep their on-premise business going and start to pioneer in new. The ones that don't work so well is when they sort of try it, but it's not really a favoured option, so they'll be continuing to sell their on-premise business, and they sort of talk about cloud, but then the salespeople get frightened and don't talk about it. That doesn't tend to be very successful, and I think Paul makes a really good point that says, I want to make sure that I am leading the conversation with my customer to make sure that I'm educating them and telling them what options are available. Now, the reality is not all customers are going to go down that route, because it's not right for all customers, but at least then you are continuing to be the trusted advisor of the customer. And even if I take the stance that Microsoft is making, we're realistic and know that we want to give customers choice both in on-premise and online. We want to continue to partner and lead with our channel to make sure they're serving those needs. But even in online services, whether that be delivering something direct with our channel partners like BPOS, or continuing to work with our partner-hosted services, or there's private cloud, public cloud. I mean, there's all sorts of different versions that customers need to be educated on, and I think all sorts of business opportunities that exist for the channel, but not all of them are well established, well defined, and I think it will take innovation and entrepreneurialism from the channel, who frankly know their business much better than any vendor does, to make the decisions around what's right for them as they take the business opportunity ahead of them.
Where is Microsoft seeing particular successes with its partners in the cloud at the moment, would you say?
I think I played on some of this earlier on, and I think there are lots of different, it's not like there's one cookie cutter, it's that type of thing that partners are doing well. I think it tends to pioneer around leadership from the top of the company and a belief that they want to capitalise on a growth opportunity, and the gentlemen sitting around me are kind of good examples of that, because they've got to basically think about strategically what are they going to do with their organisation and how are they going to invest in it. So I think that's one element that we look for. I think the other thing is the motivations of the salespeople. And we face this as well within inside Microsoft. When you're used to kind of selling a certain way and you make your business a certain way, etc. For executives, but particularly for salespeople, when they'll go for where they're going to make the best margin. And so I think looking at kind of sales compensation schemes and stuff like that is something we've had to look at inside Microsoft to make sure people are rewarded for a slightly different way of selling businesses. And then I think they have to think about how are they segmenting the market, what are they going after. So I think Dan with .NET is a good example where completely different business model to go capture in the small business market. He's basically completely segmented the business and looked at new business opportunities. So channel partners there's lots of new business models emerging, and I think we've only just seen the start of it, but it tends to be leadership, motivation of the salespeople, and then segmentation of the market that you're going to go after and be really clear of how you're going to do that, if you've got skilled people that can do it. And then you're not forgetting about your on-premise business, because clearly that's your business that's driving stuff, but then you can be seen as an expert in front of the customers.
In terms of the marketing, I mean, I take it it's had to have a complete reworking of the marketing funds and how you're helping partners transition. I mean, how big a job has that been?
Yeah, it's been, if I look year on year, I mean, the investment that we are making in cloud is not commensurate with the amount of business that it's bringing in currently. But we believe we have a responsibility with our channel to make a market, and we've got to, when we're as a company, last year we invested over 9 billion in technology investment. Currently, 70% of our engineering resource is on cloud technology. It'll be 95% by next year. And this is it's a pretty major bet for the company. And so when I think about kind of the UK go-to-market, we have to invest very heavily as far as cloud goes. And so I think about the marketing money that we put into the channel. A very significant proportion of that is being oriented this way. That's not to say we're not doing the regular stuff, because we've got to keep the running of the program, we've got to keep the training stuff going, etc., which we do. But I think we've got to make sure that we are helping partners. If they're kind of on the fence thinking either because they're being approached by other vendors, or they're thinking actually what's in it for me and which vendor do I back, we've just got to make sure that we're there with them, that they believe in our technology story, they believe in the route to market, and they believe that we will put some investment behind them to make sure they can be successful, because the people that start this are the people that will help us make the market, and we want them to be the ones that will reap the fruit in the longer term. But without them, there's only so many marketing messages customers will receive. These are the trusted advisors that kind of make it happen, and so I think we want to put our money where our mouth is.
But I think we've got time for one more question. In terms of how the channel's going to look, say in 5 years' time, as a result of the cloud, what does everybody think? If I could start with you, Dan.
I think there's going to be change. I think there's certainly going to be consolidation. I think partners will start to club together. You'll potentially get different kinds of partners, joining together. You get Lars joining up systems integrators and so forth. There's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of consolidation. But it is a brave new model. It's a lot of opportunity. The cloud is all about annuity revenue. It's what Microsoft sort of recognised as one of the major advantages of cloud, and that's one of the major advantages for companies as well. Anyone who's looking to sell their business knows that what you're crying out for is that annuity revenue. So I think it's a great opportunity, but it's certainly not going to look the same as it does right now.
Nigel?
Again, this change thing is fundamental, and I think in terms of the landscape of the partner network and the channel, I think we're going to see some of those big brands, those big leading partners being challenged, particularly around some of the ISVs who are sitting, as I said earlier, on big capital investments on product, which is on-premise. You're going to have smaller, agile service companies who are suddenly going to reinvent themselves, because in the cloud, on Azure, they can ramp something up so fast at such a low price point that some of these guys are going to have to start waking up yesterday and start evolving their product, or tomorrow they're going to be yesterday's news. And this is a kind of churn we're going to see in the channel, and I think there's huge opportunity. Any partner who feels challenged, who feels defensive, has to sit down, don't drink, but sit down and think and look at the opportunities that actually exist out there, because they are many. And the business landscape, the customers are going to tell us what they want. They don't even know yet. So you imagine once they start shouting, there's going to be a great demand. It's going to be very exciting times. So I see the change thing, giving us a lot of opportunity, and also reshaping the landscape in terms of those familiar names.
Yeah, I think if we were to ask ourselves 5 years from now, would we still see people buying software and hardware the way they've done for the last 15, 20 years? I think the answer would be distinctly no. I think that is inevitable, however that happens, and whatever model that happens to be. I think how people used to acquire and purchase will change because of the cloud, with the cloud, around the cloud, distinctly over the course of the next 5 years. You know, the cost of delivery of that mechanism will come down substantially also. You know, if I was to advise, you know, generically the channel, I think if any of us were, you know, stay aware and do what you do well. Ask the clients what they need. Ask the clients how you can deliver against that. Get help if you can't do it independently of that. And understand that, as with all things, it's not a cure-all. It's not a solution to everything. But accept that it's here. Embrace that challenge. Stay aware of it, and move forward with it.
Paul?
Once again, everything that's already been said is completely spot on. I think it's going to be a hell of a roller coaster. None of us are going to need to go to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. It's.
Damn.
I think there are big opportunities for a lot of partners in the channel to work with each other. I think that will very much come to the forefront. Who knows where we'll be in 5 years' time, to be fair. You know, if we look at the last 5 years to where we are now, the next 5 years is Starship Enterprise, isn't it? We could be anywhere. What I'm reasonably confident of throughout that is there will still be partners, there will still be a channel, and there will still be big vendors like Microsoft sat at the top of it. And there will be a never-ending stream of product development. I think the pace of the product development, particularly for all the cloud-based services, is going to accelerate. I think we're not going to be in 3 and 4 year product life cycles. We're going to be in 3 and 4 month life cycles, and it's just going to keep going and going and going, which is fantastic, particularly when we're putting customers into a model whereby, as a service, a subscription, a rental, call it what you will, they're going to receive those upgrades in their office, on their desktop, so much faster. I think a lot of the end users, as it were, within small business, medium business and enterprise are going to actually feel that IT is now doing for them what it's promised to do for the last 30 years, which will be a very nice promise to keep.
So I think, so I would echo all the stuff that's been said, but I think the theme around that we're seeing around new companies starting up, and I think we've only just seen the start of that. So whether that's existing companies diversifying into other things, or kind of millennial workers coming into the workforce and thinking, I've got a great idea and I'm going to start this, because the cost of entry is pretty low. They've got no legacy. They can really look at the innovation and technology, the appetite from customers, and I think some of the channel partners that we will see in the future that just don't exist today, I mean, I think that thing's going to accelerate. I definitely think the partnership between different channel types will increase, and I think that's one of the things, actually, I mean, as Nigel will know, we've kind of made a very big play on through the partner network, and that part of that is, A, you can differentiate yourself based on your skills, but also how do we get other partners working more effectively together, because we know when they do that, they're more successful, we serve customers better, etc. I think the thing around skills and the currency of skills, and that life cycle is going to be a very important one. So rather than kind of, oh, there's a launch coming 3 years later, I need to get myself skilled up for the newly released, I think that kind of theme of always keeping yourself current so that you can serve your customers better will be very important. And then I guess the final point is, I think there's going to be a theme around more specialisation happening in the market. So I think you'll start to see companies that are kind of been a jack of all trades. I'm not saying they'll go away, but I sort of feel there's a theme starting where people will really start to specialise a little more so that they're serving their customers. I think competition will be fierce. I mean, as in, that's why people that get on the bandwagon quickly will definitely start to prove themselves as experts in this market. And as a result of that, where people do choose not to specialise, I think you'll see partners deciding not to stay in the channel, you'll see consolidation, etc. But I guess the overall message is, this is a really growing market, and even though the analysts may not always be right, certainly all the predictions that were made a couple of years ago, the growth is ahead of what they predicted, right? So that says to me, and even in the time of recession, if I looked at our hosting business or SaaS business or whatever, then that was kind of growing 30-40% when frankly everything else was heading south. So this shows that this is a market, there's an appetite from customers. And with that means there's huge opportunity for partners, but they have to be a bit adaptable. They have to think about where they want to specialise, what their value proposition is, and what their business model they're going to back is going to be in the future. But I guess from a Microsoft point of view, we'll continue to innovate. We're going to continue to invest heavily in the channel. I made the point about cloud investment that's going on this year that will continue as a theme. And we just want to make sure we keep the dialogue going and continue to invest the partners that want to come with us.
Okay. Right, unfortunately, we've run out of time, so I'm going to have to finish it there. But thank you very much to the panel today for your time. Very interesting discussion, and I'm sure there's plenty of points that everyone can pick up on as well going forward. And thank you very much for watching.